There was a time a few months ago that I went out to dinner with my wife and two of my best friends in Singapore. It was an evening where they had gone out to dinner the week before and I had missed it. And they're like, let's do the night all over again. And so we went out to this wonderful Italian restaurant and had just a lovely evening together. And as the night was going on, I shared something about an experience I had at a conference about 3 years prior. And at the conference, I got up and I spoke on the mic after every single speaker was up there. And I had offered it as just a story, an experience that I had had. And when I was sharing this story, my wife leaned over and she said, "Well, that's easy for you, Nemo." I was Nemo at the time. "That's easy for you, Nemo." Like, and then after she said those words, I couldn't hear anything else she said. "That's easy for you, Nemo." What happened in that moment was I actually shut down. And the reason for that there was because she had actually hit on one of the biggest things, the biggest barriers that I had actually been facing at that point, which is that feeling of being alone. And more importantly, in this one, more precisely, being too much, being someone that's like has too much or does things that are too much. And the thing about this here is that for me, it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything different. Everyone has the same access to the mic, and yet no one else took it. So in my mind, it was as if others weren't playing up on my level. And when she said this here, I had a visceral reaction. I was just like, I just couldn't be in the conversation anymore because I could, what I was hearing her saying was something negative about me. "You're too much. It's easy for you, but it's not easy for everyone else." And I couldn't really bring that all in. What I didn't realize in that moment, and luckily we were at dinner with some of the two friends who I just love very dearly. They looked at me and they're like, "I don't necessarily hear what you hear." It sounded to me that she was praising you. And in that moment, I realized something. I realized that because of my past, because of the way that I look at things, I couldn't hear the words "too much" or any variation of it. "You're intense, you're a lot." Someone goes like, "Ooh," I couldn't hear that from a positive place. I could only hear it from a place of negativity or or othering. And I would love to say that, like in that moment, I just switched around. I was like, "Oh, perfect. Okay, we're great." No, that's not the case. It bothered me until the very next morning when I had that realization. When I had the realization that perhaps she had great intent behind it. And why is it that that wasn't open to me? So I embarked on a journey. I'm a part of a mastermind. I meet with someone every week. We meet, and we've been meeting since 2014. I brought this up to him. I said, I want to have a different relationship with the word "too much." I don't want it to be a negative thing. I want to also be able to have the positive end of it. The area of saying when someone says it's too much, I can look them back in the face and say, "You're welcome." And what was interesting is that we spent some time talking through what being too much would really mean for me in my business. And I just described and I told them all the things. I'm like, if I was, here goes all the things I can't do because if I do this, I'll be too much. This will be too much for other people. And I went through the entire list. And about like 15 minutes into it, I just stopped. And I said to my friend, I said, "This is wild. My whole body is tingling right now. Everything that I just mentioned to you that I think would be too much, I can feel it right now in my eyes, is exactly what I want this business to be. Everything that I wanted was on the other side of too much." And when I had that realization, I knew that there was something that I needed to do about it. And so I created a game. It lasted for the month of May. It was called Too Much May. And during that month, the objective of it was to really play into a new way of being with that feeling of being too much. So for me, it ended up being that I actually got points every time someone said "you're too much" or "you're intense," or they did like an eye thing or their body like went back with their hands up. I know all the variations of someone saying I'm too much. I'm highly attuned to it. highly attuned. I got 3 points if when they said it, I said, thank you. And I was just able to accept it. Right? So that had moved me from a place of feeling from a negative place to feeling to a neutral place, acceptance. But that wasn't the game. The game wasn't to just accept the things that were holding me back. The game was to actually embrace and leverage and love and value it. So every time that someone came out and said, you're too much, or gave me some indication, I got 5 points. If I read back to them and said, I know, you're welcome. And that entire month, I played that game. I still love to play that game, especially when I feel myself in that moment. I still love to come out and pull out the "You're welcome" 5 points. But what I found from there was that the very thing that I wanted was on the other side of the barrier that was most holding me back. And so, as we enter today's masterclass, we're talking about overcoming the barriers to your next level. And I want to play here. I want to give us a chance to explore what are some of our barriers right now, what might be on the other side of it, and how can we create a game that might carry us forward. The game may look different for each of us, but let's give ourselves some space to take on a new way of being around these barriers. So I'd like to now just come in and let's bring everyone into today's session here. Georgie, David, it's great to have you here. Why don't we go ahead and just start off here with we've gotten a chance to talk just before we started, so I feel like we've checked in that regard. I'll be curious for you if you had to think of something right now that currently is showing up in your head as a negative, a barrier, a block when it comes to playing at your next level. Take a few seconds to think about what that is. It might be a perception. It might be a way that you don't want to be seen in the world. This is not a what. We're not worried about what are you doing or not doing. Where this question comes down to your being. It's a who question. And if you have that there, let's go ahead and start this off. You can. Do you have it, Georgina? Okay. So why don't we start with you? Go ahead and share with us here. What if there was one barrier for you? What would that barrier be in terms of who you're being at your next level?
So keeping on theme with my next level being old soul, probably the barrier would be credibility, loss of credibility. I spent a long time creating a commercial brand. I'm a business person. And I've only ever used the eye reading and other facets in a personal perspective. And in Singapore, I haven't been able to do it for the longest time. So that's also another potential barrier, but I know I can push through and bring it back. But it's a confidence thing. Once you do it and you get it, and you're on a roll. Mm-hmm. So somewhere in the back of my mind, there's the barrier of me not being able to switch it on. But I'm not going to really entertain that thought.
Awesome. Thank you, Gita. And here's the thing. In this conversation, feel free to entertain it. I get it outside of here, but feel free to let the elements of being able to be with it, rather than pushing it away. I think if you can be with it, that sometimes it's on and sometimes it's not, or whatever it is. I think that amount of range will be fun with. But I get where you're coming from. Mm. Thank you, David. How about you?
I'm sitting with that, and I'm not surfacing anything yet. Mm-hmm. In other words, I'm not seeing continues to be what stands in the way is the fear that I hold on to. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I don't have a good parallel to what you're playing with. Yeah, I think it's just that undercurrent of fear that I sit with.
Okay, awesome. So for you, I'm going to ask you a different question then, right? Because I like let's just play however we need to. I love having this group here. For you, then, I'm curious for you about your 25-year vision. Right?
So am I.
Yes, yes, indeed. I have. You know what?
Been fascinated with that for about 8 months.
8 months. Okay, so if you've been fascinated with it, then I'm actually going to let that one go, because it seems like it's a brain path that you've been on in the past, right? And so what I like to think of is, like, if we're being trailblazers, one of the things we need to do is blaze new trails within our own like thought processes, right? So here goes the third question. I'm throwing out 2 questions for you right now, David. I appreciate you making this fun this morning. One of the things that I'm really keen on when it comes to playing at the next level is to have the first. I'm an expert at helping people go from 0 to 1, right? To go from it didn't exist to now it's here, right? So if there was one thing that you would be doing, this is an external element now, if there's one thing that you'd be doing at your next level that would help you know, like, okay, like, I am playing this game at my next level. It's just the first time that I'm doing it, but like, if there's one thing you were doing, what would it be?
So the one thing it would be, so if we're talking about a being versus a doing,
let's go. It
would be dancing like nobody's watching.
What does that mean?
That means having 0 fucks to give about what other people think, and not in a screw the world sort of way, but just in a this is who I am.
Got you. Take me down a little bit here. I'm going to bring it down to. I'm curious about a specific project, or like something that if I was watching you, I would be able to see, unless you're actually out in the street dancing.
No.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think that was the case
serve
there.
Anybody.
But so along those lines, if you were being someone who would dance like no one was watching, right? What would be the first thing that you would create? Like this, like, what would be the thing that if you, I'm very curious about what
small group feeder program.
Small group.
Well, so there are 2 avenues. So, I'm staring down the barrel of Mindset Mondays becoming an ecosystem, right? So there's, whether it's live events or anything event related, tagging off Mindset Mondays, that would be a logical extension. Though nothing there seems to generate any excitement.
Yeah.
So that would be one externally observable, oh, wow, that makes sense. But then putting together this small group program. I want 5 or 6 people. You and I have talked about this some. The one-to-one clients, and that's one structure, but not everybody's ready to play at that level. And so there's been conversation for a while about building that small group, which is a way to serve more folk that aren't ready to play at this level yet. And also it's eventually a feeder.
Got you.
So it serves a couple of purposes.
Awesome. Hold on to that thought really quickly. Georgina, I'm going to ask you, yes, you have music.
I actually have a question for David, and it might seem very, very left field. So please ignore it if you want to. It's more on just a feeling, and as you know, I'm trying to trust my feelings.
I love it.
Not forget, I'm trying. I'm going to trust my feelings, but at the same time, I'm not attaching to this. So if it's not relevant, I get a feeling that there's a ceiling over your head, and that there's a permission that needs to be asked to break through it. Who do you need to ask that permission from?
Oh, me. The only ceilings I face are me.
I'm seeing it as somebody external to you, as a male parental figure. Dad, granddad, that sort of thing. There's a permission to be better, permission to be, I don't know.
Interesting.
So David, I want you to think about that. Keep thinking about that right now.
Yeah, let me noodle.
But Georgina, I'm going to come back to you. I want him to answer that if he's open to it. I would love for you to come back into this and ask David from a place of power throughout the way that you introduced this question was completely without credibility. I don't know if maybe this, and I'm not sure, but you can take it out here. Da, 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 da. Like if we're gonna play this next level game, and credibility's on is something that you're concerned with, or is on
Bring
your
it
mind.
without the caveats.
Bring it without the caveats.
At the
So
same time, I want you to feel comfortable just to say, no, it doesn't apply. So with that
that's
caveat, there will be no other caveats.
so that's but like but I hear where you're coming from, and look,
Yeah,
I am
respect
someone
that.
who is like I'm like the king of making people safe. Like it's just something that like I do all the time. And there's an element in here of your credibility being tied to your ability to let other people be powerful in the moment. Right. So asking the question, it like that asking the question directly without having to caveat for them allows them to show up into that conversation as a peer as well.
Okay.
Right. And so let's play with the idea that perhaps you'll be even more credible by just asking what's on your mind and giving them a chance to be a little bit uncomfortable in the answering of the question.
Would you like me to rephrase the question then?
You don't need to rephrase it. I'd like you to just ask him from a place
Okay.
of knowing your own credibility.
Okay, David, I sense that there is a feeling over your head that you feel guilty breaking through. Whose permission do you need to seek and to release to be able to reach your own potential?
So thank you for that conversation, because it gave me a moment to play with it. And this will make sense to you, it's not anybody current, right? It's not anybody who's in my orbit in this lifetime. So I'm clear that there's not a current. So if that's something I'm not seeing, it's not dad, grandfather. It's not anything. It's not any of the men that I've identified with that way. It feels like a self-imposed governor. I don't, nor have I ever really asked for permission.
Awesome.
Which is a great awareness. I don't. So it's really just anchoring how much it's me.
Awesome. So David, I'm going to leave that.
I'm stubborn. Yeah.
So we'll leave that and let that play out as it needs to. Georgie, how did it feel to own that there?
Good.
Yeah. Did you feel the difference in terms of like the level of credit? Like there's one thing to ask, hey, like, are you open to something? I have something that I would love to share with you. Are you open to it? And getting the permission before sharing in that way, just so that they can be on the same page with you. But it's very different than like the levels and levels and levels of disclaimers that were around there.
Yeah.
Your energy and your stillness totally different the second time you asked.
Totally different. Yeah. Your credibility stems from you. And the question that's on my mind, it's that element of like, do you consider yourself credible? Because if you don't consider yourself credible, then it's a far reach for someone else to have to go and do that.
So this is a good illustration exactly of what my barrier is. My credibility stems from one thing, and that is at the moment the block. You know, maybe the ceiling that I'm putting, or maybe the ceiling that I saw in you, David, is a mirror, right? So that could be an insight, because I leave Singapore, I'm on. I can see it. I'm in flow. I've got it, right? As soon as I'm in Singapore, then I'm having to deal with something that I've never had to deal with before, and that's not seeing stuff or not seeing stuff correctly. So the credibility comes from saying things wrong and going, oh, okay, all right, and having to feel and compromise my way around that. So as soon as I'm back in flow, there will be no pause for disclaimer. There is just certainty. Since our last session, I've been listening to Higher Self. I've been on the mat, and I've been, making some huge breakthroughs. And I've just signed up as well for a course in November in Malaysia. And it's sort of deep life, past life trauma release, all sorts of things. So I'm looking to go back to that specific life where I had that trauma incident that blocked me, and unblock anything that is maybe residual. So I'm actively doing what I know I need to do.
Awesome. Jordan, there's something curious about what you said just now to me, which was the location dependence on whether or not it's on or not, whether or not you're in flow. You're like, when I am in Singapore, I feel out of flow, and when I'm out, it just comes very naturally, right? So
yeah,
it got my mind thinking. It got my mind just like I was having fun with it. I was like, oh well, if you took a vacation out of the country, would it come back on? Would you just have it there?
It does.
And then it got. I don't know if it's weird. It's the other part of it that came to my mind here is there's a couple different ways that I think we can play with this. But the thing that came to my mind here was, what if it's always on, and you're always in flow, but like either the people here are either less receptive to it, or there's something else that's going on that isn't you around this year. Because right now, like it was surprising to me. It was curious to me, at least, that it felt like it's here in one place, but not there in the other place, and all that's changed is a plane ride, and so that's something I'm gonna put it in there. I don't think I need to go any further with it right now, but just as a thing to kind of think about. What if you've always been on, and there's something else that's actually external to you in terms of that flow right there. And let's leave it there for now. This is the thing I was a little curious about. I'm going to come back to David. David, small group program. We might have talked about this. I don't remember it right now. All right. So I'm just going to come in with a freshness on the small group program. Question for you. So that to you feels like it's going to be playing at your next level, you're saying? Okay. The question I have for you in that there is, and I want to check in on this here, is the way that you describe the small group program. You're like, there's a level that I'm playing at, and I want to be able to introduce a group program that will help other people who aren't ready to play at the level that I'm playing at. That's you smiling. What's going on? You're muted.
Yeah, because when you look at it from the doing perspective, I have no problem going out and building a one-to-one client base.
Yeah.
That's a different animal for me. In the team coaching, I've got group coaching is something I haven't done formally, nor have I pitched out there, nor have I put myself out there. And it involves a different style of marketing, which is much more visible, much more public. So it's who am I being in putting that together, not what's the doing of it. The doing of it's incidental.
Yep. So let me ask that question around the being there, right? Because what
visible in public.
Visible in public. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
The answer.
But like so there's as some like I'm going through this myself, right? I'm making some shifts and bringing people into my Trailblazer Oasis, which is my group program, the first group program I've offered in the last 2 years, right? And one of the things about being visibility is one of the things that I talk about with Trailblazers in there. And I think that there's a couple different ways to be visible. And what I want to just tap into real quick is to make sure that the visibility that you're looking for is for the people that you want to be visible to. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people out there that are out there working really hard to be seen, and they aren't being visible at all. Or the people who see them aren't their people. I feel the most seen. I've been the most visible since I came back and I shared my story about the life, death, and rebirth of Niiamah. And I've been on Facebook Live since 2016, so there's an element of being publicly visible that I get on one level. I just get that you would do. I get a challenge of you doing a Facebook Live. Like that's not necessary. It's not, the doing is off there. The question I have for you is, it goes back to this part here, which is, look, I'll be honest. When I think about you playing at your next level, it has something to do with the impact billionaires. And what I got from what you said was not I'm creating like my next level is I have a small group of impact billionaires that are all out there playing this game. It felt like there's a group of people that you would normally be coaching, but now you're coaching them in a group instead. So let me just check in on that there, because I it doesn't feel like a being change. It just feels to me like the next logical evolution of your current business.
Interesting. Yeah, on the looking at it through the lens of logistics, the folks that are harder to find impact billionaires that are ready to pay what I charge. Mm-hmm. So that's an easier group to fill. I don't discount, I don't drop rates, I don't come down for anybody who is so it's interesting. That's what I see the small group being, but I haven't used that language. Where we talked about some of the impact billionaires have made the money and don't care about money and always seem to be able to generate it or find it. They're easy. They pay what I charge. The impact billionaires that have the heart, have the concept, have the drive, have the idea, but don't have the traction, they're not able to pay what I charge. So they're the ideal candidates for the small group.
And I get why.
But none of this is putting any charge in me right now.
Yeah. I think I need to check in on that.
It's all tactical, academic, and it's not.
So I'm going to go to Georgina for a little bit here, right? But I want to give you some space to tap into that, because I get it. Dancing like no one is watching, and then you're like, yeah, I got a tactical group of people who can pay me a little bit, like who can now afford me there. And like my things, I'm like, is that what you really want? Is that what this is really about for you here? Perhaps it is. Like the things that I get curious about is like, what if you do have your entire practice full of impact billionaires, right? When you have that, like, what is the thing that excites you? Like, there's something in this here, David, that I'm getting, I know what it is. So let me check in with myself first.
So Georgie just got a hit too.
Did you really, Georgie?
I just watched that. Yeah.
No,
Georgie,
what did I do?
I don't know. You just got something clicked for you, but go ahead, Niiamah.
Yeah. So what it is this. I want to give you this space and this time that we have here toward your impact billionaires versus the linear path that you're on. You're already on, and you'll see, like, every time it's like, it just feels like the natural extension of what you're doing. I'm like, okay, but this feels like a place where we can play in that, whatever your exponential growth is, because you know all the things that are next in line. And so if it is about a small group program for you, then like let's build the first small group program that would actually feel like this is me dancing like no one is watching. Like I want to, like, that's the program that we should be talking about, or that's the thing that we should be looking into. So spend some time a little bit on that right there, and you might get it during this conversation, or you may not, and that's okay. But there's that element of like, let's unleash your power of your heart here. And let's see where we can play with. Like, I want to dance with you, and neither of us is dancing right now. All right.
Even the word small group program has no affirmation. I mean, there's no intention in it. Would they be impact 100,000? Impact maybe a millionaire? Would they be dynamo intentions? What's the intention in there?
I love playing with language. So that, that's a little juicier. Yeah, small group. God, that's so mind numbing.
Impact, instead of like a huge bomb, it's like a firecracker. I don't know.
Yeah.
And as you go through that, think through that, tap into that. And as you think through that, it might be in the questions here. I just want to know what excites you, David. I get like high level what it is, and I would think that we would be in this space and we're like, all right, let's keep moving forward down that path. But then there's other things that seem to keep coming off on like the highway of David. And I think some of the things that come up here for me would be, for you yourself, if you were an impact billionaire, like what would you want to be doing? What is it like? Perhaps there's something beyond this here where you're like, look, I can get the high level clients and talk to the impact billionaires, but like for us, it's about getting 10 of these together and we're building
Yeah, I was gonna
something
say,
like
what starts to surface is growing the next generation of impact billionaires, changing
okay.
the way people think about impacting the world around them, and stop thinking globally and acting locally. Start thinking globally and acting globally,
Hmm.
right? So creating that next generation, building a
Awesome.
pipeline.
How do you feel right now?
A little more awake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Spend some more
a little more
spend
energy.
spend some more time with this real quick. I'm going to go to Georgina real quick, but I feel like we're closer
Mm-hmm.
to a place where it'd be fun to keep playing for you, and we can apply all the same knowledge and insights in that toward what you're doing on your linear path, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But let's play with that place. What will really wake you up? What will really energize you? What will really excite you? Play that out a little bit, and I'll come back. Georgie,
Niiamah.
what would really serve you right now?
I was just thinking that whilst the credibility issue is real, it's actually tied into functionality. You know, can I or can't I? So that's maybe not the best use of our time here, right? Because as soon as it's on, that credibility will just flow in and out of me. So I'd love to explore what other things are holding me back. I think even let's say I'm fully in when I am fully in power. I'm out of Singapore. I'm in flow. There's still that aspect of credibility as to how people perceive me. It's perception, right? It's that woo-woo space.
Yeah.
And in England, actually, everybody knows me as an eye reader, as a wise old soul. My family, my cousins, that's who I am. At the same time, I've been a commercial person. So even just talking it through, it's integrated in England, but I'll be moving back to a different place. I'll be moving to near where my husband's mum is. And so when I start up my business there, my coaching business and my sales and marketing consultancy, ooh, I like your question, David. Yeah, it needs to be, I just need to feel completely comfortable with being exactly who I am. And I think that old soul is a very strong part of who I am. It's not all that I am. I'm a Gemini, right? I've got two sides. I have got the commercial side and I've got the hippy dippy. So maybe allowing both to shine through. And I don't need to put on a persona. I just need to be, right? And if my deep understanding is that what I put in here will come out and manifest out there, then being old soul is central to what I want to achieve. And that achievement can be commercial success. Does that make sense?
Does it make sense to you?
Yep. Put in the intention.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Like it's really great when I like to see it's very different. There's a part where it's like you can just see the difference, David. I don't know if you feel it as well, but it's like when she's out of her power and then when she just like gets right back into the groove of her, you know. Great. There's two sides of you. Awesome. Like that's part of what makes you awesome in the world. You have access to to more than just one way of being. Like I don't there's a part of yeah I think this is where we are, Georgie. Like I don't need to go too much further with this, but I think that if there was a game that I was gonna invite you into, it would be in the credibility game,
Mm.
and to like get points for people telling you you're not credible, or to play with that element there, because it's in even just hearing the story that you just shared. You're like, back at home, I'm known as the wise old soul. Like I'm known for my eye reading. Like there's a part of this here where you know what it's like to be incredibly credible for who you are. You already know that game.
No doubt.
No doubt. No doubt. And to to David's question here, an element of like how, like, what is bringing that to Singapore? Who would you be? What would that be to bring that into Singapore so you have that as well? And my thing is, if right now, and because I live in Singapore, I get how credibility is the big thing. You know, what degrees do you have? Where have you gone to school? What, like, all these things just they do pile up. And I get where that's coming from.
It's not
And
that. It's not that at all.
then tell me more.
So I came to Singapore knowing full well I could read, be in my power. There was no doubts, right? It wasn't a have to perform. You know, I've lived overseas. I've always been exactly who I am with exactly the same capabilities. So of course, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm connecting with people, I'm reading, I'm doing all these things. But I don't have access to it, right? So it's not about an external perception or needing to fit into the Singapore frame. It just literally could not happen here. I'll go to Indonesia for the weekend, it'll switch on with exactly the same people, right? Come back and it's off. So I always thought it was a locational thing until I went and I did a meditation, and I realized that it was that past life regression and that feeling of anger that came from me. And I think where I've come to in this journey, this last week, me calling bullshit on that fear, and as you say, David, not associating myself with this external thing, has really helped me center into myself. I mean, the last few weeks, I'm quite a happy, stable person, you know. I've been going all over the place, and I feel so much better now because I've just gone, you know what, I'm not going to listen to that fear. I'm not going to do whatever. I'm going to go straight to source, and I'm going to sit with that, you know. And I felt so much better. Yesterday, I had 5 hours of coaching, and I was back in the game, completely present, loving connections, feeling the energy, you know, because I'm tapping straight into that source. So I know what I need to do. And I'm doing it. So to answer your question, David, what does it feel like in Singapore? Give me a couple of weeks. I'll let you know second week in November, because I'm going to kick it out of that park. I'm going to totally visually unblock it. I'm going to ask permission for whatever the fuck I need to just do as an affirmation, as an intention. And you know what? If it doesn't work, I'm going to leave Singapore. You know, I might as well manifest, you know, the English economy to get itself sorted as well. That might take a week or two. And then I can move back.
Yeah.
A few different characters in there to play around with.
So Georgia, like I'm getting the sense here that on this part of it all, like you're complete. Like you have, you know, your game plan in here. There's no real reason to test. You have to test it out in the real world, and then come back here. But it feels like you have what you need, and at least as it relates to what you brought up earlier. Am I right?
Yeah, and just talking through earlier about the credibility going back to England, and feeling that that's okay. I'm okay with it. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love. Actually, I'm gonna go against my own thing here. My things to keep talking. I'm gonna take myself off of this here and put this on pause. Okay. Thank you, Georgie. Is there anything else that you would need to be served right now? All right.
Thank you.
So David, let's come back to you. Like, and let's see here. Did anything? Firstly, like, what's been one of your bigger insights from today's conversation? Like, what's been something that I'll leave that question right there. What's been one of your bigger insights or frustrations or feelings? Something
beautiful example of how often, you know, our two intuitive hits are, as you call it, Georgie, the speaking to the mirror. You know, I noticed you hit the asking for permission and blowing through. So that was actually really beautiful. Thanks for demonstrating that. That was great. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
There was. Now I want to think about what was in, you know, what I was rolling through in my head earlier. What would have been my advice for me as you were talking. Yeah, I am aware of how complicated I make things. I like solving puzzles. I like unraveling the ball of twine. So I make them complicated so I get to do that. And it's never complicated. At least when it comes to me and my work in the world, it's never fucking complicated. But I make it that way because I think it's entertaining, I guess. I don't know what the fascination is. I don't know what the origin is, and I almost don't care what the origin is. It doesn't serve, or what it's serving does not serve me. So it's fascinating. As much as I thought that I had blown through that pattern, how often it percolates back up.
Yeah.
It's like new level, new devil.
Well, this is part of the reason why I ask about some of these barriers and things like this, because I find that it's like a cyclical, not a cyclical, but a spiral. It's like every time we go up to our next level, it's the same thing. Just that thing has now shown up at its next level, you know? Like I am visible in the world, but am I willing to be visible in this way? At first it was just, can I get on Facebook Live? And now it's like, now that I'm here, can I actually say something about me? You know, or am I willing to
bring
talk
our
about
saboteurs up with us as we level up? Yeah,
yes,
thank you. That's lovely.
Yeah. So that might be fun for us to play with. There was something that was in mind.
Oh, and Georgia got a hit.
It's not so much a hit, it's a different perspective, right? If these habits are keeping coming up for you, there's unfinished business. You keep on evolving, right? And obviously they're meaningful. These habits are serving some sort of meaningful service. And the more that you're able to keep reframing and pushing them away, they get weaker and weaker and weaker. Very few things in life that are worth solving or that are that intrinsic to you can be solved with just one interaction. They will keep on coming up because you're building up your resilience and your solution. Whatever that learning is, you are forming into a positive habit. The more it turns up, it strengthens you by doing that until you can karmically let go of each other, whatever that's serving. So it will keep on going until it doesn't. That's how good habits are formed.
New ways of addressing the same issue in its new form.
Because
closing out old business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for example, that need for complexity, right? Whatever is driving that might be the need to prove something, for example, right? There's a need there. And underneath that, it just keeps showing up, but you face it and you go, I'm not going to engage. Great. That you created a habit there, right? You've created a new synapse, right? And it will just keep on coming back until you've got exactly where you need to be to completely drop it. So it's there to serve you. In whatever format it comes back to you, it's there to serve you until you've completely gotten where you need to be with dropping that need. It's an opportunity.
Yeah, then I noticed the resistance of, okay, but when I'm done with that pattern, then what? It's become comfortable. So it's pulls from both sides.
Two things really quickly on that, David.
Yeah.
That question, when you're done with that pattern, then what? Like, that's actually try answering that question really quickly. I'm gonna go down the line here with you. When you're done with that pattern, then what? When you no longer have to deal with the issues that you've been creating for yourself, because those issues are done and you have no more excuses. You've taken care of all.
What comes up is then I have to find another dragon to slay.
Yeah.
I feel like I've always got to have something to work on, complete, close out.
And so this is where I'm going to call out here, right? Which is like that question of then what might be the very reason why we're creating these levels of whatever the fears are. The fear itself may be the answer to that question, not in terms of what you will actually create, but if you didn't have these issues, then you wouldn't be held back. And if you weren't held back, then what?
Yeah, what resonates stronger is I use those obstacles, those issues to wrestle with as jet fuel to move forward.
And what
So
I'm playing with you with,
when I contemplate the what if, what lands harder is, you know, what am I going to use to drive me? Because each time that I've played bigger and played at a new level, it's been blowing through something. It hasn't just been, let's peel something off and play at a higher level. It's let's blow through an obstacle, let's blow through a barrier to play at a higher level. So all of those notches up have always come through some semblance of a struggle, not a clearing.
yeah,
I
think
can't even
that's
contemplate the latter.
that's
right.
that's what I'm calling out, Georgie. I see you. Just give me some time to go through here.
Yeah, it doesn't compute yet.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm calling out here, right? I think Georgie's like spot on. Like, look, you have an element of like, let these things be your compass, right? Which will help you know, like, okay, this is clearly there's something I need to resolve here, and I'm going to keep playing at higher and higher levels to blast through and use that as a compass. And then I think the question that I have in mind is around this is like, if you didn't need to keep creating these things for you to get to your next level, then what would you do? And look, I'll be real with you. The reason, like, you
mean,
got
what
it.
if it were easy?
Potentially, it's along those lines. But I'm going to say it very specifically. If you didn't need these things in order to get to your next level, what would you do? And I'll be real about this here. Like, you got it if you see it, or you can name it if you see it. You can see it if you got it. I think that's how they say it. Like, this is very real for me a lot of times, where I talk about belonging and possibility. Those are the two things that are for me. And it's like, I am often reminded by someone outside of me who's like, Nemo, you've already passed whatever challenge it is that you're trying to solve. The reason that you can't figure out this answer is because you already belong everywhere. You're in a place where you will go and you will always be loved. So you don't have to actually worry about being loved. You don't have to worry about will you be accepted or not, because you're so damn good at it that no matter what you do, woman. Yeah, well, yeah, but this is I've met her, but this comes from all over the place.
Yeah,
this comes from all over the place, and the idea there being like, I'll be honest with you, what comes up for me is just open fear. It's the most afraid that I get, because it's like I'm confronted with myself as a boundless being, as someone who has infinite power to create whatever I want, because this is the only thing that really gets me, that keeps me from ever creating. And as we talk about like unleashing the power of your heart, it feels like I'm very, very curious around like what would be beyond it. It doesn't mean that it has to be gone right now, but it's like if that was no longer the case, and you could just be in a place for the next 25 years where all you had to do was dance like no one is watching. That was it. You didn't have to like prepare to dance like no one is watching. You didn't have to like bust through a fear to in order to dance. Like, you just got, for the next 25 years, you were able to just dance like no one else is watching. It's in that, like, that's the level of freedom that I'm looking for you here.
A lot for me to sit with. I mean, I need to. That's so outside of the way that I've been looking at my story. It's a beautiful rewrite, and there's a tremendous amount of power in it.
I see you, my friend. Play with that. Play with that.
Yeah, so much of the conversation is about sort of like Michelangelo's approach to sculpture. He didn't sculpt the piece. He removed everything from the block of marble that wasn't the the piece. And that's what it feels like you're describing.
Mm.
That's the image that comes clear. Again. Hmm.
All right.
Got a steep.
Yeah, steep with that. And Georgia, I know that there's something you want to share. I'm going to ask that like either that you reach out to him outside of this, or we bring it out another way. I want to let him steep
It's always open.
with this for a little bit. Yeah, I think if you can play with what comes beyond the fear, and what it is that you want to create beyond the fear, whatever it is beyond the fear, so that you can finally just dance like no one else is watching.
I do have something very small that will add to that and help with that.
Great. David, are you
do
open
it while
to that
I'm
right
mobile. I have to switch rooms so I can talk to me while I move.
Okay. You're open to that then? Okay. Georgia, why don't you do that? Then I'll go ahead and close us off for today.
You know how last week you talked about fear being external to you?
Yes.
Right. So it's just with that. So it keeps coming back to you because you identify with it. And sometimes you identify with it because you can really use it for rocket fuel, right?
Right.
Another way of looking at it could be fear is happening. Not I am afraid, but fear is happening.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Treating it as external.
Fear is happening. Joy is happening. Anxiety is happening. Whatever. It's happening. Okay. I observe. You see, you're not attaching or you're not indulging in it unless you want to. That's your choice.
It's a huge theme for me. It's just being intentional.
Right.
Right. So being intentional about how fear exists in or is framed in my world.
And just
Thank you.
it. Yeah.
So let's do this here. Thank you both here. I see you two both for playing. I'm going to close out with you first, and then I'll close out overall. David, Georgie, like you two have been showing up very fully for yourself and really embracing this opportunity here. I really want to acknowledge you for exploring and expanding and shedding and blowing through and all that and letting go and all that the different ways that you're playing with being at your next level. Right. What I'd like to do here is there's an element here that, you know, part of me is like, okay, so what do we want to tangibly do now that we've had this conversation, you know? And I'm going to resist that in this current moment because we've worked on the key parts, which is the being part of it, right? And I think that some of us we're still steep in it here. So I think instead, while I'm closing out here, I'm going to ask each of you to make an internal commitment. You don't have to say anything to me, but an internal commitment about who you're going to be during this next week. We have one last session here in the Next Level Masterclass. And that one, between that and now, I would love to, who would you want to be and who would you practice being there? One commitment to yourself, right? And I'll wrap this up overall with all of you here. So we looked at this here. This was a really interesting conversation around the barriers to where our next levels are. And we explored it from a number of different ways. We saw how perhaps the barrier that we have is something that we've overcome in other areas of our lives or in other places in our lives, and how we can extract knowledge, wisdom from that to apply in new ways. We see how that barrier might actually be the compass, might be the exact thing that's fueling us to move forward, or the direction that really holds what it is that we truly want. The thing that I'll leave you here is a question around what is the gift that your barrier is giving you? What is the gift that this so-called barrier is giving you? And invite you to play with that relationship and to play with it from a standpoint of getting even more range, getting more power, and being able to integrate far faster as you play along your next level. The next time we talk will be the last session in this masterclass. This has been a great thing for me as well as I've been playing in my next level. You can see this powerful people are with great visions are the people that we play with. I'm looking into ways to continue this going forward. And some of the most exciting work that I've done in the last 2 years, I was talking a little bit about it earlier today. And so I'll share a little bit about what that's going to look like toward the end of the next conversation as well, so that we don't just have to end the masterclass and just have it be done and final, but we can continue the journey together. In the meantime, the point of this year is not to focus on what is holding us back, but instead to be able to use it and see what it is and be able to get more agility and more facility over each of those barriers. So what's the gift that a barrier of yours is giving you? I'm Niiamah Ashong. It feels great to say that. And I'll see you at the next class. All the best.
Thank you.